Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eckhart Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 2010 movie titled Rabbit Hole. Now, Rabbit Hole is a drama that runs for 91 minutes long. It is directed by Giancarlo Esposito, based on the Pulitzer Prize-winning play titled Rabbit Hole by David Lindsay Abaire, and David Lindsay Abaire also wrote the screenplay. The production staff consisted of Nicole Kidman, Leslie Erdang, Gigi Pritzker, Per Sari, Dean Vanich. The score was done by Anton Sanko. The cinematography was done by Frank DeMarco, and the editing was done by Joe Klotz. And the stars of the movie are Nicole Kidman, Aaron Eckhart, Dianne Wiest, Miles Teller, Tammy Blanchard, Sandra Oh, and Giancarlo Esposito. Now, Rabbit Hole is the sentimental story of the fragile and halted marriage of Becca, played by Nicole Kidman, and Howard, played by Aaron Eckhart, as they're overcoming their work life while facing a sexless marriage, while coming to grips over the death of their son, who was killed in a car accident. Becca eventually takes the initiative to confront the teenager Jason, played by Miles Teller, who was behind the wheel that struck her young son. This is her way to come around and to let it out of her system as a way to sort of move on with her life. Based on the 2007 Pulitzer Prize-winning play by David Lindsay Abaire, he also took the responsibility to write the screenplay. It is a melancholy and depressing story of an unhappily married couple trying to break out of their grieving phases after the tragic death of their 4-year-old son, Danny. Under the careful direction of Giancarlo Esposito, it shows how many individuals find distractions whenever the grief bug manifests within themselves. But the main reason this film is quite special is because it refrains from overdoing the tearing moments while procuring strong provocative scenes centering around the best and the worst of human emotions, while at the same time not overplaying it. There are numerous ways as members of the human race practice in order to escape the doldrums of our lives. Some of us seek therapy workshops as a way to vent out what's ailing us and to have another person whom we can open up to when no one else seems to give a damn about our problems. Like in the case of Howie. During his group therapy sessions, he's been spending some time with another member, played by Sandra Oh, and they've been having, a bit of a rendezvous with each other, while at the same time, not in a way like he wants, in a way like showing a lack of interest towards Becca, but he needs to find a way to escape. It seems that Howie is very deeply grief-stricken, and that's not to say that Becca is any less grief-stricken. She just wants to put away all of Danny's personal belongings, hide them, even going as far as to sell the dog, and maybe even going as far as to sell the house, because she just wants to not be reminded of Danny. And not to be in a cruel way, but as a measure of, trying to escape from this illness that's affecting both she and Howie, called grief. I mean, sure, she misses Danny just as much as Howie does, and she has her own ways. There are many, many ways that people try to overcome grief. Of course, like I mentioned, seeking therapy. Others do more outwardly stuff that might seem a bit more spontaneous, like taking up drinking, smoking, and sexual tendencies as a way to chase their troubles away. And then there are those who eventually take up stuff like hobbies, such as collecting stuff or doing some spring cleaning, like putting things away as a reminder of the person we love so much and to just leave it in the past. There are many ways to conquer grief, and Rabbit Hole examines each method by keeping it subtle while staying true to the narrative, which is why this film deserves better recognition. Though it's a very heavy story to handle, the narrative succeeds by staying easy on the sentimentality, and instead we are actually more intrigued by how our two leading protagonists try to overcome their tragedy of grief and to move forward to a new beginning, and that there's always a way out of it if you could just find it somewhere. There were unintentional humorous scenes, like when Howard hosts a family who wants to buy their house they're trying to sell, and even though it may have looked a bit awkward, it was still very effective, and we are more convinced that Howie is perhaps the more grief-stricken parent than Becca was. Not to be usurped by Eckhart, Kidman turns up an Oscar-nominated performance as the housewife who sacrificed her dream career to look after her 4-year-old son, and now she's on the point of becoming sort of semi-reclusive. She doesn't want to mingle with too many people, especially those who slip into bringing up her son's death, which also includes her mother, Nat, played by a very, very stunning performance from Dianne Wiest. She is just a great character actress, and she looks like she is always seems to prime herself up to playing effective supporting roles. She is just really phenomenal. I mean, Becca's mother, Nat, also experienced the same thing too. You know, I mean, she lost her son to a drug overdose. Yes, okay, he was 31 years old, and Becca is dealing with a 4-year-old toddler. But still, you know, the pain just never fully goes away. It will linger on to you for the rest of your life. But you still have to move on. Life still goes on, even after death. Just because one person dies doesn't mean everything gets shut down. The sun will still keep shining, the rain will pour, the clouds are still going to be puffy white, the sky is going to stay blue, the sun's going to stay yellow. But we must all find ways to overcome grief, because if you become grief-stricken till eternity, then that's not good. Nobody wants to be that way. We all want to move forward to find happiness. Danny probably did not want this to happen to his parents. Yes, we didn't want him to die. It happened. It was an accident. Things like this do happen. We don't like to think about it, but it does happen. The emotions from Kidman are absolutely sublime, and the subplots outside the center story involving her disdain towards her sister's premarital pregnancy, and I think probably one of the most effective scenes was when she comes face to face with Jason, played by Miles Teller, and instead of, you know, like venting out anger and rage towards this guy, she surprisingly actually accepts his apology, and she doesn't, you know, like scream to the tip of her lungs or looks like she wants to get into a physical fisticuffs with this kid. I mean, this teenager will have to live with this burden for the rest of his life. He has to live with the fact that he is thoroughly responsible for the death of Becca and Howard's son. And he feels very bad about it. And she understands that he's going to have to live with this burden for the rest of his life. He's being punished enough as it is. Wyad fumes by like screaming at him or wanting to rip his eyes out. No. She doesn't want that. She doesn't want to do that. And he doesn't want her to do that either. I mean, he feels just as bad as she is facing the grief, and he is going to live with this guilt with him, and he's going to take this guilt with him to his grave. And he feels deeply sympathetic and deeply remorseful for his actions. And by her confronting the man behind the wheel, we get to see some inner peace between them. And he even offered her a comic book titled Rabbit Hole. This is where the title comes from. And gives it to her as a gift, as a token of apology. And I think that is probably one of the most tender moments in this movie. This is a movie for sensitive viewers. Now, a lot of these depressing, sentimental stories usually often tend to be, drab, lonely, and make you more depressed. Rabbit Hole is a whole different ballgame. You're not going to walk out of the theater upset or depressed or feel like you want to hit your head on the wall. No, this movie is not. It's a tearjerker, yes. It is a heavy subject, I agree. But it's not too sentimental. And that's one of the reasons why I actually did like this movie. There are a lot of movies that are about depression, cynicism, and stuff. This is actually, believe it or not, a feel-good movie with a light that there is a positive light behind this rather drab, depressing story. And through the brilliant script from David Lindsay Abaire and the provocative camera work from John Cameron Mitchell, this movie really is among one of 2010's best films. One of the best traits towards the narrative of the story is that it maintains a solid effort without ever going over what's happening, like as if we're not aware of what's happening. This movie does not insult our intelligence. We know what's happening, but it doesn't like go through detail to detail and spoon feed us. We never really get to right away know what's happened to Becca and Howie's son. But what makes David Lindsay Abaire's play so poignant and John Cameron Mitchell's direction so liberating, so that we the audience can decide what conclusion is best for our satisfaction. We also highly appreciate as to how Howard and Becca are doing. We also like to anticipate as to like what happened to Howie and Becky after this movie ends. Had they managed to find happiness? Had they managed to find peace within one another? We all hope so, because we truly care for Howie and Becca. We also truly care for the other characters too. We also hope for the best in Jason, and we hope that they can find peace within their family, within their relationships, and within each other. There are a lot of very, very sympathetic characters in this movie, and we could all relate to them at one point or another. And in spite of what they went through and all the little secrets they kept from each other during these trivializing moments, we like to see what happens to them once the camera finishes rolling. We kind of grow a bit accustomed to them. The issues discussed here are definitely quite provocative in its plethora of many of the issues that we have encountered, whether it brings happiness or eternal gloom, and to look for that sign of optimism that was lost, because the situations we face at times are not always pleasant. And if we can find that problem and turn it into a solution we can fix, it might help us revive that smile that was once lost from us. Sure, this movie is definitely gloomy and depressing, but there is a feel-good element that comes to life over our protagonists. The message is that it's okay to cry when things look sad and grim, but no person wants to stay sad forever, and that's very inspiring that Howie and Becca have managed to understand that. The message is simple here, but it's a very important one. If I was to give this movie a scale out of 10, I would definitely give it a 9. Well, that's all there is to the writer review. Thank you all for listening in, and I will be back again with another movie review. So if you want to leave a comment, feel free to do so. You can subscribe to my channel if you like. Remember, be kind, be courteous, don't be rude, and I will be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eckhart Writer saying, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.